Hello, fellow members of the Coven, and welcome to the harvest season, where we talk about whatever I want to. This is a very special episode, as my name is Kevin, and I am the only host today. Here I am, Kevin, home alone on this uh, harvest season farm, whatever you want to call it. Due to a number of circumstances, I am doing this episode solo. One of those circumstances being the today's topic, which will be wildflowers once again. So last time we talked about it, we had only done a brief cover. We only touched on certain topics, and we weren't very far into the game, either Al or I. I have since beaten the game, as I said last week, and I have a lot more to talk about. So today I will be doing a deeper dive, and there will, of course, be spoilers today. Um, but before that, there will be plenty of news and other items, etc. Before I begin that, I should note that we do have, as always, uh, transcripts available on the website that is harvestseason.club, where you can also find our show notes and links to all the news items, etc., that will be covered in this episode. And so with that, let's dive on into the news. Now the first piece of news I want to talk about is actually related to one of the few things I ended up doing this week that I want to talk about, which was Let's Build a Zoo. I just so happened to see on my Steam page that it had an update, and so of course I updated that and looked right into it. And it here it is on our news docket. The the Sloths and Spa update. This is a free update that is already available, and at least on Steam. I do not know if it's out for Switch already. I'll have to look into that. But it introduces sloths into the game, which that's wonderful. Sloths are incredible little critters. I'm amazed they weren't in the game already. I didn't even realize it. And introduces spas, a new mechanic slash feature, uh, under a attractions category. I have not unlocked it yet, so I can't really attest to what it's like, but it looks to be like a new sort of metric for you to keep track of, in terms of keeping your zoo guests happy, etc. Um, but alongside this was a perhaps bigger announcement of the next big expansion for Let's Build a Zoo, the Aquarium Odyssey update. This is a big update that, like Dino Island DLC, seems to be a separate area where you can build an aquarium. It's going to introduce over 50 new species, all sorts of fish and aquatic critters, which I am very, very, very excited for. Um, as for those of you who do not know, I grew up along the coast of California. My father used to scuba dive, my uncle used to fish, so I spent a lot of time down there by the bay and have a very deep nostalgic fondness for so many of these sea creatures. So yeah, I will definitely be getting that and playing a good bit of it. It might be worth, who knows, doing an episode in the future on all this DLC, since this has been significant amount of content that is dropped. As for the date, all we know is that it's coming in 2023, but no specifics beyond that. But there is a trailer on the Steam page, so go check it out and be excited alongside me. Now, next up on our news, we it's a game called Homestead Arcana. So we have a release date, April 21st, which will be just within a few days of this episode dropping, about 5 days from the day of recording here. Um, and so there is a Steam page with a trailer for you to check out for people who have missed it, myself included. We have here a Magic Cottagecore game. What a what a coincidence, huh? So that said though, it actually looks pretty impressive as far as cottagecore type games go. Um, so it is a full 3D with rotating camera, bigger sort of scalar scope than Wildflowers. Um, and you play a character named Huckleberry, and you grow crops with magic. There's crafting, you're building your home, the usual cottage core works. But the selling point, or whatever you want to call it, is that there is a miasma that you have to deal with. That's the primary issue. Now this kind of reminds me of Harvestella to a degree, but you're going into this miasma and trying to reclaim the land from it, right? You're trying to grow things in it. You're trying to find artifacts and recipes, etc. There might be combat. It was a little unclear from the trailer, but there were hints at that as there were creatures being mentioned, but I did not see any actual combat. But there is gear and potions and things for you to upgrade as you prepare for trips into the miasma. So there will be some degree of challenges and obstacles in there. So it'll be very interesting to see. Overall, I'm intrigued by this. The game does have a very nice presentation, I think. The art style is decent enough. I think it's stronger than, say, Wylde Flowers. But like I said, it's a full 3D game, which is, again, impressive given the usual fare we have on this show. And perhaps most mind-blowingly, at least the primary character, Huckleberry, will be voice acted by one Yuri Lowenthal. For people not familiar with that name, that is a very, very big name in the voice acting world. He has done all sorts of characters. I think he's been in the Persona series, and honestly, the number one role, most notably, he is Sasuke from the Naruto series in the English dub. Oh, he was also Spider-Man in the PS4 games. I know Al would be excited to hear that. Um, so yeah, and he's also narrating this trailer, and he's very good at his craft and very excited. But anyways, so all that to say, the presentation is very strong, so I'll be keeping my eye on this one. This game, again, is called Homestead Arcana. Dropping in just a few days on April 21st. It will be on Steam and Xbox Game Pass, I believe. Oh, one item I did see just looking at the Xbox versus Windows thing. The mouse controls seem a little awkward. There's like points where you have to grab plants, and I don't know, it just seems a little awkward. But that might just be a me thing. Overall though, very, very strong trailer. I suggest you check it out. And speaking of things to check out, I'll definitely be checking this one out. Fabledom is the next item on our list here. And as of last Thursday, April 13th, I believe? Yes, Thursday, April 13th. This game is now available for early access on the Steam page. For $20, I'm sorry, $16 USD. Yes. Apologies, I am looking at the price. Anyways, I'm having difficulty because it's actually on sale for 10% off right now in these first 7 days. Luckily, by the time this episode releases, you will still have a couple of days to check it out if you'd like to get that early access. Now, for people who may not remember, Fabledom is this village builder, I would call, where you're, kind of like the Civilization, or actually, I say I haven't played Civilization, where you're just trying to build this village, and you're kind of overseeing it. Now, I think we talked about this with Al last time, where it's really focused on like village rustic lifestyle. You're not going so far as to progressing to cities and whatnot. I think the art style is very cute. It's 3D. There, it looks very nice. The art style reminds me of Overcooked. If you people are familiar with it, the characters, one of the primary little characters they show on this has a mustache that reminds me a lot of the Onion King. Um, anyways, think it looks nice. And I like seeing the villagers interacting with the actual village and helping build it. So I am looking forward to it very much. Let's see, there's also a flying pig on the title image, or whatever you want to call it. And I don't know what that is about that, but flying pigs excite me. So yeah, that is already out for early access, and you have just until uh Thursday, whatever date that is, 7 days after the 13th, April 20th, I guess, to get the 10% off on that early access. Now, for another game that, well, I don't know if it's doing early access, but our next item is Koa and the Five Pirates. Let me make sure I got that name correctly. Correct. Excuse me. Yes, Koa and the Five Pirates will be launching. Well, excuse me. The Kickstarter will be launching on May 4th. There's not much to go off because the Kickstarter hasn't launched, but this is the next entry in the Chibi Games universe, right? Koa is the protagonist from Summer and Mara, if I recall correctly. And they did Ancora and Alt and was it Wyland? I forget the name of that. I apologize, but the point being, we've covered a lot of those games here, and they've been all over the place. So it will be interesting to see. Absolutely. And so again, that is May 4th, and just a few weeks we'll have the Kickstarter and definitely have more information then. Something else that we have information and a lot more information is Cult of the Lamb, a cult classic. Playing off myself here, folks. Um, so we have a big, big update coming soon, and it is free. It's called Relics of the Old Faith. It is a whole new post-game story slash campaign. So there is a lot new. Really, it feels like a little bit of everything. New enemies, new dungeons, new bosses, etc., new abilities. So on the Twitter thread that where they talk about it, one of the items they note is some of the feedback they asked for was, or that fans asked for was, more depth to the battle system, a little more challenge, and so that seems to be a lot of the focus. So this storyline has you listening to some other odd creature deity thing. The trailer shows a lot, only little bits of it, right? So you just get just a taste of what's coming. But overall, it looks very, very hefty. And again, this is a free update. No date they're working on. This is in the final touches, I believe. Um, and I don't know if that includes. Let me check Switch. I wager that might be a little delayed. Uh, yeah, no, I am. It doesn't specify, but keep an eye out because that update will be coming hopefully soon. And honestly, give me a reason to get back in because I've been thinking about Cult of the Lamb. It's a great game. I want to see the polish on it, and just seeing more for free is just absolutely wonderful. What a great game. Uh, let's see here, and our final item on the news list here. Ooblets, another update. Um, we know two things primarily. First, we are getting a spring event in Ooblets. I don't know if we have a date yet. The one thing that is rather clear is that it looks like a bunny. Which, sure, spring, Easter, it makes sense. Um, that said, though, I think it's a little tough because I still think the king of Easter events is Zipper T in Animal Crossing. Can't compete with that. But that's it. Go check it out. There's a little teaser trailer showing the silhouette of this new ooblet. For you fans, I'm hopeful it's good for you. And you guys are excited. But yeah, no other information other than that right now. Okay. And that more or less covers the news for today. A little lighter today since it's just me. I know some of the other news items will be moved to next week's episode, which I know at least there's one game I'm very excited to talk about. And Spencer, if you're listening, you know exactly what it is. Um, anyways, before I get into the primary topic, since some people might want to talk about due to spoilers, I want to just announce one important item that next week's episode, as of right now, we are planning a mailbag episode. I know we've been talking about it, and we've gotten a few questions. But next week we will be dedicating a good amount of the episode to that. So, please, if you're in the Slack, feel free to drop questions in the feedback and questions thread, or reach out to Al via Twitter versus the email. All the usual links and places you can find the harvest season. And drop as many questions as you'd like because I know that it's going to be fun to see what the hosts have to say about it. Who will be on it? I will not say. It's me. As of right now, at least I'm planning to be on it, along with one other person who I will uh let that be a surprise. Anyways, so yeah, keep that in mind for next week. And now, with that little announcement out of the way, let's dive right on into the main topic, which is me talking about how much I love wildflowers. All right, this is a spoiler alarm. I'm going to try to ease into the spoilers, so your mileage may vary on how much you want to hear or not. Um, I will not be I will not be covering the most like blatant end game spoilers, right? Because there's mysteries and some questions, and I won't be covering every nook and cranny. I will leave some stuff for people to explore and enjoy on their own. But there is plenty to talk about on this story, which I think might attract people to this game, which I really can't suggest enough of. It's already an amazing game, like even just knowing the core mechanics and such. But yes, so again, once again, here is your spoiler warning. Again, not everything will be spoiled, but I am planning to cover the gist of the plot, as it's pretty jam-packed. Which again, one of the I think most amazing things about this game is that we have a sort of bona fide story. Not often the case in these cottage core type games that we often cover here. And so let's so to begin this, I think I'm just gonna have to kind of go chronologically because this game takes the story you hit credits after your quote unquote 1 year anniversary of Terra Wild moving into the Fairhaven, excuse me, the town of Fairhaven. Once again, if you want to hear, Al and I did an episode, I think about 2 weeks ago, covering this game. If you want to hear the general mechanics and things like that, I suggest go give it a listen first. Um, it's absolutely fantastic, and I won't cover too much of that. Um, but anyway, so yeah, so the game you open in spring, where Terra Wild, you playing as Terra Wild, move into this town called Fairhaven. Um, and you'll meet your grandmother, Hazel Wild. That's Wild with a Y. And and so she introduces you to the farm that she runs. She is getting in on her age, and Tara has decided to start a new life as she had a rough time. She lost her job recently, and she had a fiance who broke off the engagement. So, that's a pretty rough start, and it makes a lot of sense to go help your aging grandmother run a farm. It's a pretty win-win situation for her, or at least given her circumstances. And so you start off the game, as so often these games go, learning about the farm, learning the town, right? And this town is full of so many characters. I am considering doing a separate section on the characters. I am still debating that at the moment. Um, but I will keep that in a separate section. But anyways, I digress. And so in meeting these various characters, you also meet some people with masks and robes, and these are the witches of Fairhaven, which, of course, it turns out Hazel is a member of, and Hazel introduces Hera to the coven. She's initiated into the coven, and so she starts to learn this kind of balance between this farm that she has to run and these responsibilities as a witch. Because it turns out they play a pretty pivotal role in Fairhaven. They control the weather and the seasons. Pretty big, all things considered. And so, in doing that first ritual to change the seasons from spring to summer, this is our first big story point as our grandma Hazel actually passes away. Um, Kind of a big deal at the start of the game. I was strongly you strongly see that from the beginning that she's really having a rough time. She's on medications, etc. But I didn't expect it like just after that first season that she would passed away. But given that, Tara is now fully in charge of the farm. So, come summer, that's a lot of responsibility on her shoulders, etc. And so, summer, you get into the rhythm of the farm, etc. And you actually meet a few new characters in summer. Some people who move in. Um, one of them is Geva, a meteorologist who lives kind of out in the mountains to study, and the more no, well, let's say central to the plot character, a rancher by the name of Marty. Um, Now off the bat, you can see Marty has some questionable history, as it's already implied he's using a false surname. Um, but moving into the town also opens up your ability to get animals, which is, pretty core part of any farming game. Uh, but I digress. During the summer season, there's the kind of the end note for the summer season is this summer festival where Tara is, of course, crowned the summer queen. I forget the exact title, but at this moment and during this festival, she's accidentally transported to a new location, kind of in Fairhaven. It's called Ravenwood Hollow, and it is this magical forest area with magical inhabitants. We're talking a fairy, a werewolf, a gnome, or etc. Or and and so right, like this is halfway point of the year, and the status quo has changed pretty significantly, right? You can see, okay, there's a lot more to this game. Um, it's, I think it was a really well placed move, and just as someone who had already been enjoying it to that point, just really hooked me in. Like I wanted to see what was going on now because clearly there was a lot more to explore. Um, let's see here, and I apologize. Okay, and so after this summer festival. Um, an interesting event, well, circumstance occurred, let's say, right? Because once again, as part of the coven, you have to change the seasons, but now you actually have some pressure to change it because after the summer festival, a drought kicks in, and this actually starts affecting the gameplay. You will run out of water in your wells, certain shops can't function, etc. You actually have a bit of pressure to change the seasons because it costs you if you don't, right? And so you put in that effort, and once you actually do change the seasons, enters the next chapter, which is fall. Now, fall is where the story really starts to gain traction. Um, the I think the first event that happens right away in fall is the announcement of an election, which is really surprised me because the mayor in this town, his name is Otto, uh, a very mayoral type, let's say. And it didn't even occur to me that there would possibly a change in the status quo. And it just so happens that Marty, the aforementioned rancher, is the one running against him. And so that's when, as I said, this is when the story starts to pick up because the town life becomes a little more interesting, a little more dynamic with the selection, and also with the introduction of Ravenwood Hollow, the magic inhabitants, etc. You learn a bit more from that side as well, right? And some of the history of the coven and some of the lingering issues, right? One of the key elements from the beginning of the game is Hazel wanting to unite the townspeople with the coven who are hiding in the shadows, and so you start digging into that issue a little more. Now, I will say with the election, I was uh, unfortunately disappointed because you do vote in it, but you can't actually affect the outcome, much to my disappointment. Otto will retain the title as mayor, which is actually it's a little disappointing, but it makes sense because it is pivotal to the story later on. I digress. But with Mayor Otto having his one re-election, he the story starts going in an unexpected direction as there's how should I put this? it starts really you can start seeing the some conflicts arising in the regular town's life. Right, and it begins with this program he calls the Neighborhood Watch, as some people have started to take notice of some of the questionable people in the forest at night, implicating the coven, the witches, etc. Right, and so this leads to actual bona fide witch trials as neighbors start accusing each other of being witches, etc. Um, it's very dramatic for this type of game, to be quite frank. Like, emotions ran high. I got terribly upset at certain people and so on and so forth. There's betrayals and treachery. Um, there is a bit more to it at play. I won't get into the details again. Not trying to spoil every single item, but there is again this town being so linked to this magical world, right? There's some impacts from that side of it as well. And as a member of the coven, Terra has to address those issues and resolve the unfortunate magical implications going on. Um, and this is all tying into issues from the magical world itself, which is suffering a sort of imbalance. As there's an item called the Wellspring, which is the source of magic and has to be replenished and kept in balance. And as that is suffering from balance issues, it's leaking over into these witch trials and the life of the townspeople, etc. Um, so a lot of the fall season is spent with this setup of the right, leading up to the primary conflict, the crescendo, the climax, right? Um, and so during this time, you do move over to winter, the final season, which actually is a fairly sizable season compared to the others. It felt like, because again, there's some more witch trials, and the whole issue with the wellspring and the balance of the magic on the island comes kind of to a head. As there is another masked witch not part of the coven that's discovered that is running around, right? And so this becomes a central issue and all leads to this climactic conflict at the end of the game, which, again, I'm not going into details here, but was quite a finale, to be honest. It went places I didn't expect. There were, again, betrayals, treachery, and then just a really big finale sort of final sequence. And it's just so interesting to see in this kind of game attempt that, right? Because this isn't a Pulitzer Prize winning story, right? It's not its strong suit, looking in the general video game world. There's much better stories and so on, but in a farming cottagecore game like this stands out for sure. Um, I enjoyed parts of it, absolutely. It was maybe predictable or, not really treading new ground, etc. But overall, I enjoyed it, right? And so much of it comes from the characters, right? The dialogue, the personalities, which are all really, really well done. Um, and so, yeah, so I was still engaged, even if it felt maybe weak or, mm, standard story, or whatever you want to call it, right? But I was still engaged throughout the whole way and genuinely interested in seeing where things went. Um, and it's how should I put this? One of the interesting aspects that I think it's pretty clear that a lot of the themes are very reflective of relatively current events, at least in the US here, right? The election, the witch trials, I think are very reflective of not getting into specifics, but real world issues that, at least here in America, we've had to deal with in recent years, let's say, right? The polarization of people and these conflicts that arise from that, like, yeah, right? They're using witches and malcontents as stand-ins for several groups, I think, which again, it's not particularly deep because I think it's a little clear, was it a little on sleeve. again, for a farming game, this is death, right? We don't see that in farming games, so it's really fun to actually be able to see and think about that. Um, so with that said, I think I'm trying to think of what other items need to be addressed. Right, because as you're progressing through the story, you're constantly unlocking more mechanics and locations and things like that. Right, when you, as I mentioned, Giva, this meteorologist, lives out in kind of like the mountainy area. That's a whole new area you have to unlock. Um, and a whole bunch of new resources and things to see, right? As you progress relationships with villager or townspeople and whatnot, you unlock different facilities, different things, right? There's the mine, and there's a whole little backstory with the mine too, and learning about that is interesting. Um, Seeing again these conflicts of people being accused and sometimes unintentionally or well, I don't know if unintentionally is the right way, but again, as people try to repair relationships and how these story events actually affect the daily routines that you see the townspeople go through and doing and whatnot, and affecting their moods, right? Some characters won't be smiling during certain times, right? Certain characters will avoid certain locations, etc. Um, so it's all, again, none of this is, I think, mind blowing or maybe not super notable in the grand scheme of things, but for a farming game, the type of content we cover on this podcast, it's really, really impressive to see and well done. I don't think any of it was really bad. Maybe a little weak, a little meh at times. Your mileage will vary. Um, but I enjoyed it. Um, and so, yeah, I think with that said, really I think that more or less covers all I really want to talk about for this game. Again, that's not covering a lot of more specific spoilers. I think I did an okay job of leaving out a lot of these answers and questions. So I really invite you to play this game, right? Because all this talk was primarily story, but if you listen back to the other episode, there was so much in regards to the mechanics and just the gameplay, which is all super enjoyable throughout. So I cannot recommend Wildflowers enough. It is a wonderful, wonderful game. And so, yeah, thank you very much, dear listener, for entertaining this talk about Wildflowers again. There's more content coming out. I don't know if there'll be more story. It would be kind of nice to see because I think there are some things you could go, some directions you could work with. But I will probably be bringing up this game as stuff comes out. But until then, um, you can find us. Well, I say us. Well, you can find me, Kevin, at CooperPrez on Twitter. See me retweeting things primarily, or at Sprider Squared on Twitter, where you can see some of my art, pixel art, etc. More importantly, you can find uh, Al, the actual host of this fine podcast, at the Scottbot, or on Mastodon's at Scott on Mastodon. You can find the show on Twitter at THS Pod, where you can see uh, lots of retweets about these news items, announcements of new episodes, etc., etc. We have our own website, harvestseason.club, where you can again find show notes, transcripts, links to a lot of the news items we talked about, and again that feedback section. Very, very important. Um, at least for the next episode, where again we're trying to do a mailbag. So please drop all those questions you have, or if you happen to be part of the fine crew who have joined us at patreon.com/thspod, and gains and have access to our Slack, where you can talk with other fans of the shows, with pretty much all the hosts who hang out there, and can drop feedback and questions through there as well. Please do. Um, Also, if you happen to subscribe to the Patreon, you will gain access to the Greenhouse, a separate podcast where we discuss other often non-farming game things, etc. I know we have run the release schedule on the Greenhouse has been a little shaky recently, I think, but we are working on things. I promise you. So keep an eye on there. And thank you very much again, listeners. Thank you, Al, for letting me solo this. I hope you all enjoyed it. Blast Al on Twitter if you hated it, because he'll get that, not me. um, but until next time, dear listeners, I hope you all have a very good harvest. Okay, I'll say it right. Have a good harvest. There you go.
The Harvest Season is created by Al McKinley, with support from our patrons, including our pro farmers, Kevin and Stuart. Our art is done by Micah the Brave, and our music is done by Nick Burgess. Feel free to visit our website, harvestseason.club, for show notes and links to things we discussed in this episode.
I always have to be a headache for Al.